Item is discussion on assessment schedule.
Evening. We talked about this last board meeting about the assessment cycle because we're beginning to enter it. And many questions have been asked about how of these tests, all these tests we're giving, how much time does it take of each student at a different level of the instructional time we have during the spring. So if you look, we're already testing right now. We're doing the access, and the alternative assessment will start April the 15th, and then we move on to ACT Quality Core. We're giving 12 of those. We're participating in the ACT Aspire in grades 3 through 10. That is a pilot. It is going to be, and it's going to be recommended to the state board, our new ARMP test. We are part of the pilot, so all of our students in grades 3 through 10 will be participating. And by the way, ACT, end of course, and Aspire are online, so they will be taking it with their individual computers. We have AP exams going on, and then we have our STAR test. And then finally, at the very end, in grades 3 through 8, we have the Alabama Reading Math test, which is the plus version now. And this will be its very last year.
Kathy, if I could just chime in here for a minute. So the ACT Quality Core and, of course, assessments are new this year. The state is bringing those on over a period of years. We brought them all on at once. And the reason we're doing that is for a variety of reasons. Most important is we will now have formative information throughout the year about how our students are doing in key subject matter areas in secondary education. The STAR assessments have been very helpful to us in primary education with regard to reading and math. But when you get into biology, chemistry, history, there really is nothing there that's aligned with what the country's doing, what our kids need to be prepared to do, and that gives us insight well ahead of that final test. Well, with the Quality Core, we have formative assessments we can give to know if we're on track for the children to be successful, so we can make course corrections. The Quality Core assessments are aligned with where our country's headed, which is college and career ready. We have a waiver from our state that allows our students, if they pass these assessments, they will get a high school diploma, even if, and they don't have to take the high school graduation exam other than for the simple purpose of No Child Left Behind, meeting those requirements. So our kids now have 2 ways to get a high school diploma. They can take the high school graduation exam and pass, or they can take the ACT Quality Core exams and pass. And with the Quality Core exams, we get a lot more insight on how prepared they are for college and how well we're doing as educators to get them ready. And so that's a new battery of assessments. Our teachers have been going through the training all year long for this. A lot of work going on there.
The Aspire test is a pilot, but we will be getting individual student responses back similar to the end of course that we can use for next year. So we are not paying 1 penny for that pilot, but yet we will be getting data on each end of, sort of like an end of course for grades 3 through 10. That will provide us additional data per student. It's quite valuable data for us as instructional leaders.
If I can just add one comment there, you'll notice 3 letters sort of dominate here, ACT. And ACT is sort of the benchmark for getting into a college. Colleges use that to understand if a child's going to be prepared to be successful in their first year of college education. Our goal is for our students to leave here, go to college, if that's their choice, and not need remediation that first year. So that's a state goal as well. And so lining things up with ACT is that sort of alignment we're after. So ACT test to get into college, ACT Quality Core curriculum and secondary education to line up with that, prepare our kids, ACT Aspire program to replace Alabama Reading Math test to prepare our kids in those earlier years for the Quality Core and then for the ACT assessment. So things are really starting to line up. And this is critical because there are still discussions in some quarters of our state about the Common Core, about things that originate outside Alabama. And we make any move away from this, we're going to be making a move away from preparing our kids to enter college and succeed that first year. Everything is now lining up. Education across our country is lining up with a target, and we don't want to deviate from that.
Well, in looking at how much time we're taking to do these assessments, I looked at grades 3 through 8. we have 24 days between April 22nd and May 23rd. So that's actually 168 learning opportunities or classes. So if I take a typical third grader to seventh grader and they take the ARMP test, which is really a 4-day test, so that's taking 8 periods. They take the Aspire, which is a 1-day test that lasts 2.5 hours, which is 3 periods. And then they'll take the STAR reading and math formative assessment at the end, and they at the most take 45 minutes, but on the average for us it takes 20. So we'll say 2 periods. So basically, of those 168 learning opportunities, assessment only has basically taken 7.7% of that time. So all the other time, we're still having learning opportunities till May 23rd, because actually this year is the first time where the ARMP assessment will be right up to the very end.
And what worth noting is, of that 7.7% of available time for student education, the majority of it's taken up by something that's going away called ARMP.
Yes.
The new assessments take much less time.
That's true.
An 8th grader is a little different, because some of our 8th grade students this year not only will be taking ARMP, they will, if they're taking algebra or geometry, and we have quite a few taking Algebra 1, they will also be taking the end of course for the ACT this year. So we will have end of course test in 8th grade. So that takes about another 1% of their time. So if you're an 8th grader and taking Algebra 1, basically about 8.8% of your time will be spent in assessment between those 168 learning opportunities. And when we look at high school, the last week of school is their exams this year. And so high school really leaves the learning opportunities May the 17th, and they go to exam periods. So when I look at a 9th to 10th grader who is taking the ACT, taking 2 end of course tests, they're going to take the pilot, the Aspire pilot, if you're in 9th or 10th grade, because our 9th and 10th graders will also be taking the pilot. They'll take the STAR test, and basically that's 7% of a 9th and 10th grader's time. And most likely about 2, an English and a math end of course test is what they would take in the 9th or 10th grade. Now when you move on to the 11th and 12th graders, they might have, for example, they'll take the ACT end of course. In this case, I showed an example of someone taking the end of course for history and English, but taking an AP math test, just one math. So that's a math, history, and an English, and that's about still 7%. But if they're taking 2 APs and 2 end of courses, that's only 8% of their time. So you can see when we're looking at the end of course, it takes roughly 1 day. It's 2 45-minute periods. It will be online, and they'll take 45 minutes, 10-minute break, take the next 45 minutes, it's over with. So it takes roughly 3 periods only to take the end of course. And if you're taking 3, times 2 would only take up to 6 of the hours during a 2-day period. So you can see that the most we're taking is 8.8 for the one that is taking, the 8th grader who is taking Algebra 1 will probably be the one student spending the most time in assessment. And so in high school, if you're taking 3 AP courses, you're not going to be taking an end of course test, because this year you're not taking both. If you're taking an AP English, you won't be taking the end of course test because you'll be taking the AP English.